Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It is the end of April. It's 85 degrees today, and I was just walking around my garden. It's the middle of the day, so it's going to be super harsh light. But I was walking around my garden looking at things and thinking to myself, should I mulch at this time? And no, I don't think I need to mulch right now, but I'm going to tell you why and kind of go over the benefits of it a little bit. So it's an interesting time of year. We've got cold weather plants, cool weather plants, some more cool weather plants, and then we've got some summer plants in the garden. We've got things that are just growing. We've got things that are established. And it's important to come out at this time of day so we can look at how these plants are responding to the temperatures outside and what's going on. If you look at these peas right here, they look great, but they feel a little wimpy right now, and they're just responding to this heat. Now, this isn't a consistent heat that we're getting. Today is gonna be 85 degrees, and I think it's supposed to rain a little bit tomorrow maybe, and then it's gonna be in like the mid 70s and the 50s at night for the next week. So we know that we're not gonna really stay in this heat, and this is an important factor for this. So, I mean, this could benefit from some mulch right now, but you know, when it cools back down, it's gonna rebound just fine. You come out here in the mornings or the evenings, and it's just nice and strong and filled with water, and it's doing well. But then if we come over here, and this is actually a time period where 98% of my garden's in the sun, so it works out pretty well. But if we come over here to this freshly planted bed, we see that these heat-loving plants, they're doing fine. They've only been in the ground for, I think, 2 days now, so they're just getting established. But you can see that they are just kind of hanging in there right now, and I think they're personally loving the heat. The question becomes, what do we mulch? What plants like to be mulched? So if we walk around our garden here, I'm just gonna go over a couple things real quick. So we have our potatoes, for instance. So over here, these potatoes, they're looking nice and strong, I may add. So they're doing very well. But we don't wanna mulch the potatoes because we don't wanna keep the freshly grown tomatoes too moist because they'll begin to rot, right? So we'll keep them unmulched, keep them hilled and all that stuff. And then this bed is a little bit tricky. So we have onions in this bed, and we also have some garlic in the front row. Now the garlic likes to be mulched, it likes that cooler soil. So what we're probably gonna end up doing is we're gonna end up coming out and just mulching this one row up here of garlic. And then the rest of the onions, we're just gonna let them grow, let that heat get to them so they can start to bulb and create the onion so that we can harvest them. So, you know, you don't wanna mulch them just yet because the mulch does a couple things. So if you haven't gathered so far, mulch is magic. And I'll go over in a little bit what mulches I like to use. Mulch retains water. Mulch will cool the soil. Some mulches will warm the soil, and then mulch also turns back into organic matter into your garden, which gives us that fluffy texture that we look for, so we don't have compacted soils and we can dig in it and the roots can move through it easily. So mulch is really important, and if you don't mulch, I would probably urge people to start mulching. There are people that use black plastics, and there is a time for that, but regular mulch can just do wonders for your garden. Like if you come over to this bed, like this bed's so densely packed right now with these lettuces, like mulch isn't gonna do anything. You're just gonna go in there and just really struggle to get the mulch in. And to be honest, all of these plants packed so tight together are acting in a sense like a mulch, where they're shading the soil surface and they're keeping it cool. Compared to these freshly planted squashes, look how bare this is. So you would think like, oh, now would be a good time to mulch, and you can see like in the sun, like these plants aren't very established, so they're wilting a little bit, so we actually need to turn the water on. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing if you do it right. And that's gonna be the key to this. If you do this part right, it actually could work out in your favor. If you think about it, if that plant starts to wilt, it needs water. Well, it's gonna try and survive, so it's gonna push its roots further down looking for water. So I've been letting it just get to a little bit wilty like this, and then I'll go on and I'll turn on my watering system and let it water. It's all in ground so that it'll turn on and it'll then not let it wilt to a point to where it's gonna die and struggle. But you would say, well, why wouldn't you want to mulch this bed back here? Well, right now, with the weather the way it is, this is a summer garden bed. This is, you know, zucchini, squash, all that stuff. They like warmer weather. So if I mulch it, it's going to keep that soil cooler. And at this time of year, when it's already going to be a little bit cooler, we don't want to cool it off too much. So we want to keep that mulch off of it and let that naturally dark soil build back up. So dark colors, this very simple, dark colors will absorb heat. So if you think about it in respect, if you watch my channel for any amount of time, how many times have you seen me wear a black shirt? I only wear them in the wintertime. I never ever wear black shirts in the summertime. I never wear them any other time of year except for in the winter when I want the heat, because it just makes me too hot. So, I mean, simply speaking, I have a big azalea tattoo on my chest. It's a dark color. I can feel the heat on that because the ink is darker. So you think about your soil the same way. If it's dark, it's going to absorb heat. If you put that light colored mulch, it's not going to absorb the heat, and it's also going to shade it so it keeps it cooler. So that's why, for instance, I just planted this bed here. This is a tomato and pepper bed, and it's been in for a couple weeks now. Things are starting to grow. I actually need to come out and put the cages on the tomatoes, but that's a different story. But we still haven't mulched yet. Now, when it comes time, we are going to end up mulching probably from here back. And I may put a little bit of mulch up here, but we're going to mulch pretty deep around here because we want to regulate the water going into the tomatoes. So if we regulate the amount of water that the tomatoes are taking up, then we eliminate that dry, wet period, which can cause our tomatoes to crack. But right now we're not producing tomatoes. It's the cool weather. We are getting rain periodically. We're not in a dry spell or anything like that. So it's a really good time to just kind of let it sit, let the soil warm. It'll help the plants grow faster. It'll help them get more comfortable. And then when it's time and it starts to get real warm, then we're gonna start actually putting the mulch on and then building up on the base of that as well. So same with this corn bed behind me. I just seeded it the other day. You can see there's nothing growing in it yet. I do need to turn the water on it too, by the way, just to kind of keep those seeds moist. But we will probably end up mulching that, especially as it gets warmer, to help retain the water, because corn can be very thirsty. So it's a good method to kind of retain the water and just hold it in for some of these crops. But like I said, for all these other crops over here, the lettuces, the onions, the potatoes, the carrots, even the cabbages, there's no point in doing it, because especially for us in my area, which I'm in zone 8A in North Carolina, it gets so warm that they're just going to go to bolt. So you're just going to be doing a lot of work to move that mulch in underneath it for really no good reason. So I would say, like this bed behind me here, we've probably got, I'd say about a week, maybe two, before it's going to have to be emptied out, or else everything's just going to bolt. And if we put the mulch on the surface, it may slow it down, but the damage could already be done. So I know that you're probably thinking like, hey, well, when's the best time to mulch? Like, give me a date. And that's something that's really hard to do, is to give you an actual date of when the best time to mulch is. I mean, we can do something like, for me in my area, once it starts getting and consistently staying in the 80s and above, and the nights are really in the 60s and it starts to get muggy, that's when we're going to start mulching. And we're really going to try and stay on top of it and get a nice, deep, thick layer of mulch on. And it'll stick around for the whole summer. You only have to really do it once, unless you're doing a lot of planting and moving stuff around. But there's a right and a wrong way to do it. And when we go to do the mulching, I'll show you how I mulch these certain plants and stuff like that. But I want to take you over to my super secret mulch pile and show you what I got going on and explain to you why I use a certain mulch. I am a big fan of using straw. I really like to use it. It's cheap. And yes, it does. I brought you over here when it was sprouting just to show you it does have some seeds in it, but it's okay. It's not like using hay or anything like that. Now, I do want to bring to light the fact that I did a previous video a couple years ago where I was talking about straw and I called it hay, and I mean, I got crucified. All right, so hay has a lot more seeds. Straw doesn't necessarily have seeds. You need to find out if it's been treated with any kind of herbicide. I get mine from a gardening center meant for, you know, putting in gardens, so we know it's not been treated with anything bad. Hay is way more nutritious than straw for your soil, so there is that, but you are going to have a lot more seeding. Now, if you come over here to my compost, what I'll do a lot of times, especially in the summertime, is I'll put straw into my compost for the browns sometimes, because you kind of run low, we don't have a lot of leaves and stuff around, and I will put it in, and you can see that in fact we do have some straw plants growing in here, but I want to show you this. That's all it takes to pull it out. I'll tell you this, and I'm going to be straight up. If you're trying to grow a garden and you need to use mulch and you can't just grab something and pull it up easy like that, you might want to rethink your path. It's super easy. It is what it is, and you can even chop it back up and put it in your garden and let it rot down. Just don't let the seeds take hold and drop, and it's going to be fine. So we routinely get some of these small plants that will grow, some of the seeds that will go, and it's not a big deal. But we'll take this straw right here and we use it for everything. So we put it in our chicken coop, we put it in our compost, we put it in our gardens, and it works really well. It's cheap. I think this bale of straw right here, which we have about maybe 3/4 of a bale left, I think it cost us $8 for a bale, and one bale should do just about all of my gardens that I need. And we go through, we'll usually buy 2 to 3 bales at a time and leave them out here. And so one thing that we do as well, which is really good for your garden, is we leave it outside and we let it sit on the ground just like this. And what you can do is when they make it, you see how it comes apart like that? You can reach in here if it's been wet and feel it starting to compost down. And then you can also flip it over and you see how it's just got all of this life growing underneath it, and it'll actually start to grow some mycelium underneath it. And when you put that in your garden, it just gives it another avenue to feed your garden and get the nutrients transported throughout your garden. Basically what that is that's an easy way to add something that's super complicated and not worry about it and not pay for it. So sometimes we'll spread these out around our yard and we'll have different mycelium from different areas going into our garden. No big deal. We'll leave it outside. Sometimes we store extra bales in the shed if we're not going through them really fast, especially in the winter time, because it'll stay so damp. But I came out here probably about 2 months ago and pulled it apart, and steam just poured out of it. And so at that point, you know, it was already composting down and it was cooking. So we could add it to our garden and know that it was just really going to fuel. In this bed here, we've got weeds and stuff. As soon as we put the mulch down, we'll give it a light cultivation so we can kill the weeds off. And as soon as we put the mulch down, the weeds will stop growing. They'll be easier to spot when they come up through. We'll be saving water. We'll be cooling the soil down as the temperatures go higher and higher in the summer, keeping it for a much better growing condition. And I mean, if you look at it, I just want to show you, I did in another video about the cucumbers that I planted behind the kale, and you see how some of them are actually in the shadow of the kale. That's just kind of going to help cool it off a little bit. One place that I do need to add mulch, and really soon, is in my greenhouse. So we're going to come back in here and we're going to mulch this heavy. We're going to have to handle this a little bit different because it doesn't actually get rain. So we'll be top watering a little bit just to kind of keep it moist, keep this mulch on it, keep the weeds down, and really help to keep these plants cooler. And that's really going to be the mission throughout the summer for this. We don't know how that's going to work out. We're going to try it, but we'll see. So I would say don't put mulch in your garden yet. Wait for the temperatures to be consistently warm, because plants aren't as weak as you think. They're a lot stronger and they can make it through some warm spells. Just wait until it gets consistently warm.